Hi, and thank you for tuning in. It's been a while since I've uploaded a new video, and part of the reason for that is that it feels like I've made more videos than I actually have because I've done a few podcasts and interviews with news media in India, and it just kind of struck me today that, man, it's been a while since I've uploaded something to my YouTube channel. So I wanted to give a little update for those of you who might have been wondering what's going on with the fraud who calls himself Nityananda. Good news is that it's looking like his Gurukul will be closed and the kids will be able to go back home to their families to get a proper care that they need as developing children. His Gujarat center they've been served an eviction notice by the landlords. I saw that the central government of India gave a notification to the Karnataka state to close his Bidadi campus, which is the campus where the kids had been forced to beat each other, that the kids told me about. And his December program, Paramashivoham, which hilariously used to be referred to as PMS, the $16,000 December program, has been canceled. So nobody is going to pay 16 grand USD to get brainwashed this December, the way they have previous Decembers. I'm not ready to fully celebrate that his cult is destroyed yet, because he is still making regular uploads of discourses where he's kind of rattling off his narcissistic, egomaniac, psychopathic babble. But I think that enough of a public service announcement has been made now by other whistleblowers and his victims and people who have left, that I don't think he'll have any luck trying to recruit anybody new into his cult going forward. So that's really good news. But personally speaking, I have finally felt like I got back in the groove of my own life and my own creative expression and my own spiritual path again. Recently, I was doing the podcast with Chris Shelton, who is the critical thinker. He was one of the whistleblowers against the cult of Scientology and somebody I was really excited to visit with. Sorry, I've got a incoming kitty friend. This is Oreo. But on Chris Shelton's podcast, I had mentioned that part of the reason I was receptive towards cult brainwashing was that I was into a lot of new agey mystical things like tarot and like crystal healing, and that because of that, I was ready for a cult to kind of scoop me up and indoctrinate me. In the comment section under that, one of you had commented that it's sad that I have lost a connection with the crystals or with the tarot or with my own spirituality. And some people had replied in that thread that maybe I was only saying that because that podcast was made for atheists and that the audience was more skeptical. In reality, I have been really going back and forth over the last few months trying to discern what I believe and what I don't, and to come to terms with what kind of woo-woo, hokey, mystical stuff I was ascribing to that's actually just bullshit, and what has some actual practical value to it. And I finally came to a new conclusion, or to a higher perspective, just in the last week or so, while making new jewelry pieces and working with Moldavite and Herkimer quartz, two of my all-time favorite stones, and working with other gemstones, where I realized that whether the effect of crystal healing is purely the placebo effect, like the people who wear it believe it's going to do something good for them, so it does, or whether there are actual mystical powers laying dormant within the matrix of the crystalline formation of the gemstones, whether the colors of colored stones work via color therapy, or whether they actually have an energy to them, it doesn't really matter. If somebody wears the stones and feels benefited by them and enjoys them, that's not a destructive, dangerous energy in life. And so I was contemplating between which practices are dangerous and destructive, and which practices might just be healthy expressions of human spirituality and seeking. And coincidentally, I picked up a book that was a birthday present for me a couple of years ago from my grandparents. And it's a book about the history of beads, going back 30,000 years. And I mean, I'm a jewelry nerd. I don't just have an Etsy shop where I sell the jewelry I make. I read thick books about the history of jewelry. I'm that kind of a person where if I'm doing something, I want to know all about it. And in this book about beads, it actually mentions that prehistoric sites dating back to the Neolithic times have shown that one of the very first things human beings did artistically, even before cave paintings came into being, was fashion jewelry for themselves, stringing together stones and seashells and seeds and berries and things that were wearable to use for personal adornment. And that every culture in human history has a sacred meaning that they ascribe towards their jewelry, whether it's prayer beads and malas or rosaries that symbolically represent counting your prayers or your mantra intentions, whether it's the symbol of a god or a goddess that people wear as jewelry, or whether it's the meaning given to crystals and stones, which again go back into prehistory. People believing certain stones have a magical protective quality. The way that this kind of stuff is used has personal significance and cultural significance, and allows the wearer to express their creativity and uniqueness in a similar way to fashion, but in a way that's far more precious than fashion. I've never had problems throwing away clothes or donating clothes to charity once I outgrow them or when the style no longer feels like it represents me. But I've kept every piece of jewelry I ever wore, even if I'm no longer into that style of jewelry, because it represents that time in my life. Just recently, I got a nice message from a young man he was a kid when I first met him back at the time when I was living in Germany. He was just thanking me for being in his life, and he mentioned that a crystal pendant that I gave him back at that time, he's kept it with him throughout all different transformations in his journey, through ups and downs, and that it represents to him that when he was a kid and a lot of the other adults around him were not treating him properly, that somebody believed in him and thought he'd be successful, so he carries it to this day. That really resonated with my inner space as the reason why I feel so passionate about making jewelry, and specifically natural gemstone jewelry. Not necessarily because the stone has an energy to it, although I still kind of think they do, but because the meaning we give to the pieces we wear has a profound effect on our psychology, so that whenever we wear those pieces, we are reminded of the intention behind them and the meaning that we give to them. Recently, I was commissioned to make a necklace for a lady who left the Nityananda cult. And if you've seen my other videos about him, or if you've been following that story, you know that one of the things he does to members of his cult is forces them to wear a choker with his picture right at their throat chakra. And he calls that choker the Kantamala, and tells people wear it 24/7, never take it off. And he says that he infuses his energy in their self-expression through their vak, or through their Vishuddhi chakra. So this lady who left his cult commissioned me to make her a beautiful necklace out of Herkimer quartz and Moldavite to replace that Kantamala, so that she can have a piece of jewelry with personal spiritual significance to wear every day, the way she used to wear that. And another dear friend of mine who used to be in that cult has requested something similar, but made out of turquoise and garnet with some lapis lazuli. And that got me thinking about how when we're forced to wear something that doesn't resonate with who we really are, when we take it off again, one of the first things we want to do is replace it with something that does represent who we really are. So when I took off the choker that had that fraud fake guru's face on it, the first thing I did was put a moonstone necklace that was the first piece of gemstone jewelry I bought for spiritual purposes because it's the stone of the goddess. I put that moonstone necklace back on to replace that fraud master's picture, to remind me of the divine feminine energy, and that the connection with maternal care and being compassionate to others was my goal in spirituality all along. And whether the moonstone really has that energy of connection to the goddess, or whether we feel a reminder that we naturally have a connection to the maternal divinity, it's irrelevant. Because for me, whenever I wear moonstone, I remember the ultimate spiritual goal for me is to bring love into all of my communications and to raise people through my compassion, not to belittle them and put them down. And I suddenly realized this striking contrast between what I was looking for when I got recruited into that cult and what I actually found in that cult. When I decided that my goal in life was enlightenment, my idea of what enlightenment would be was compassion, care, making the world a better place, living by this concept in Hinduism of Vasudeva Kutumbaha, which is Sanskrit for meaning the whole world is my family. But instead, that community was restrictive, elitist, self-centered, shunning anybody who believed anything differently. So instead of expanding the parameters of family, it really reduced them and limited it in a really tribalistic, us against them kind of a way. And so for me, starting to wear moonstone again brought me right back to what my goals were, right before I got dragged into a destructive cult that did the exact opposite. And as I've been contemplating about that and rereading all of my books about jewelry, I'm remembering again the power of these physical objects to serve as reminders of what's really important in life and what's really good and worth pursuing. And so I just wanted to kind of share that with you guys because I've mentioned this in a few podcasts. And especially it came up in a podcast I did with Dr. Rachel Bernstein, who does a really cool interview series. She calls it the Indoctrination Podcast. So she talks with people who have been members of all different kinds of cultic groups. And in my interview with her, she complimented me on all the colorful jewelry I was wearing, which is why I put on my most colorful multi-gemstone necklace and a really colorful bracelet here, one of my favorites with the stones representing all the chakras. And when she complimented the colors, that was the first time I realized how much of a subversive act it felt for me when I first started stringing together a bunch of colorful gemstones again after leaving the cult in India, because in that cult, we were only allowed to wear orange. Once we took the vow of brahmacharyam, we were only allowed to wear rudraksha jewelry, and everything we had, whether it was a coffee mug or a handbag or the blanket on our bed, it had to be orange. And I like the color orange, and I love the symbology of the fire burning away your negative desires. But it got really restrictive and boring, wearing nothing but orange and brown all the time, day and night. And so starting to use colorful materials again felt so freeing. And I think this is something other people who left that cult feel as well, is that suddenly there's a whole rainbow of colors that we can wear once again, and there's a whole world of beauty and gemstones. We don't have to look at just rudraksha seeds. We don't have to look at just the crystal that he gives us. We can experiment with all the materials that we feel so inclined to do. So I'm getting really into jewelry. I've been spending most of my time rebuilding my Etsy shop, making pieces like this necklace and this bracelet, and like I said, working with Moldavite and Herkimer quartz again. An interesting thing is that Moldavite has long been referred to as the stone of transformation. It's a tektite mineral. I've made a whole video about this separately. It's created during the moment of meteoric impact where the celestial object fuses while burning up through the atmosphere with the ground below and creates this amazing gemstone kind of a glass that's the combination of extraterrestrial and terrestrial material. And so people who work with crystals take this as a symbol of the alchemical transformation that can happen within us when our human consciousness merges with super consciousness. That kind of meteoric strike moment where we have that aha realization of our place in the cosmos, where this cosmic energy comes down into our human form. But anyhow, the stone has also been described as the kind of a gem that will, when you start wearing it or using it as a form of crystal medicine, anything you're holding on to in life that's no longer serving you will start to drop away. So when one of my friends from the cult requested a new replacement to wear as a mala instead of the Kanta mala out of Moldavite, I realized how bang on perfect that stone is for anybody deprogramming from cult mind control, since it is known as that kind of a gem that will just remove from your life anything that's no longer serving you. And so I've been wearing some Moldavite again, which is something I used to do like a decade ago, with the powerful intention that any indoctrinating ideas or restrictions or false beliefs that had been planted on me during my time with the fraud guru will be burned away. And boy, does that ever feel good. Spiritual self-sovereignty and having the right to determine what we believe and what we don't believe, what we wear, what we don't wear. I made these really blinged out Herkimer quartz and sterling silver hoops that, I love them so much. I'm gonna put them in my Etsy shop, but I'm also going to make a pair for myself because I think these are just gonna be my new everyday earrings. And it feels really good to get creative like that again. So yeah, so that's a little update about what's been going on in my life. If any of you have the idea to get a holiday gift for somebody from my Etsy shop, I don't mean to put any pressure, but suggest maybe do so quickly because I'm shipping every single day now. As soon as I get an order, I send it that same exact day because I don't want anybody's gifts to arrive late. But this weekend might just be last chance to get them in time because mail volume this time of year is bigger. Things take a little bit longer to reach their final destination. But I also wanted to do a special giveaway. And in previous videos, when I've mentioned my Etsy jewelry, I've mentioned if you mention this video, I'll send you a free this or a free that. This time, I'm going to send a Herkimer quartz and a piece of obsidian. Each one separately. I'll make them like two little pendant charms. The Herkimer quartz, which is the form of quartz crystal, this pretty diamond-shaped, naturally double-terminated quartz crystal. It's the most powerful quartz version of a transformation stone and a catalyst for personal spiritual awakening and change. I'll send one of those and an obsidian. Obsidian is known as the gem or as the volcanic glass that gives the most psychic protection. So protection against the evil eye or negative intentions from others. I think that having these two stones together, the obsidian has been described in the Book of Stones as being like a cosmic vacuum to clean up all the negative debris in a person's psychic field. Whether you believe in that or not, in the shamanism behind obsidian that was kind of given birth to in South America by the mystics who first started to work with it, whether you believe in that or not, I still really feel these stones carry an energy. A lot of that energy might be our belief, it might be psychosomatic, it could be placebo effect, but I really love that stuff and I'm choosing to work with it again. Thought I'd announce it here. And if you are too, those would be my little gift for you if you buy anything from my shop, the obsidian and the Herkimer quartz. Just remember to mention this video at checkout. And if you've got any questions about gemstones, I'm thinking of starting a series that I promised years ago on my channel, but I never actually did, where I'll mention a new video, a new crystal, maybe once a week in a new video where I talk about just that stone's properties, the way I once did one about Moldavite and Herkimer. If you'd be into that, comment below and let me know which crystals or which gemstones you're interested in. And I think I'm gonna really start that series. That might be my New Year's resolution for 2020, is to finally make my crystal playlist. And if you have any other questions or anything else you'd like to see in a video, comment below and I'll try to get back as quickly as I can with the next video. For now, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Bye.